We just proved this fact. I should probably end my proof with some slashes. There we go. We just proved this fact. It was a proof by picture, which, not the best, but it works fine in this case. And hopefully it was illustrative of how the squeeze theorem comes into the game and how basic properties of trig and so on and so forth. So let's look at one more key limit with you. I want to study this limit together. And so right away, I start this limit and I'm instantly stuck because I can't use the direct substitution property because I'd be dividing by 0. It really doesn't seem like there's any tricks. There's always a trick. And so I'm going to try, just because I have this notion that maybe if we multiply by cosine theta plus 1 over cosine theta plus 1. Now, I just made that up on the spot. This might be a complete train wreck, but let's try it. And you'll see why I came up with this particular thing in just a moment, but let's FOIL it out. And so when you do that, you get the limit as theta goes to 0 of cosine squared theta minus 1 over theta times cosine theta plus 1. And hopefully, at this point, you can see why I did this, because you can play around with your trig formulas and come up with a simplification for that. Here it is. Let's do this in purple so that you can see. You know that sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta is 1. And so let's see. That means that sine squared theta is 1 minus cosine squared theta. And in particular, here we go, minus sine squared theta is cosine squared theta minus 1. I'd rearrange there just to keep the sign simple. And so the point is, when I use that, then this limit is, the limit is theta goes to 0 of a minus sine squared theta all over theta times cosine theta plus 1. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this problem in the following way. First off, this negative, I'm going to pull it outside. I'm going to write this as negative limit theta goes to 0. And then I have a sine theta times a sine theta. So I'm going to write this as sine theta over theta times sine theta over cosine theta plus 1. Now, just make sure that I didn't cheat or do anything wrong here. Sine theta times sine theta, sine squared. Here's the negative. The bottom is the same, right? I've just rewritten it. But now I recognize the limit on the left. This part is going to 1. And what does this part do? Well, as theta goes to 0, sine theta goes to 0. And cosine theta goes to 1. But 0 over 1 is just 0. So this ends up being negative 1 times 0 over 1 plus 1, which is just 0. And so I'd like you to make sure that you know this formula, the limit as theta goes to 0 of cosine theta minus 1 over theta is just 0. That's the second key trig limit you'll need to know. We'll need these later on. So the first one is that one, right? And the second one is this one. So let's end this lecture. We are done after this. You guys have done so great. I want to end this lecture with some examples of limits that I expect you to be able to do and you'll need to do in the homework. So